The October rain came down like soft piano keys against the glass roof of Phoenix Art Gallery, painting ripples of silver light on the polished floors. It was closing time, and Maya Collins moved quietly through the exhibit hall, her heels clicking against the parquet like a metronome. She loved this hour. The hush before the city swallowed her again. She adjusted a frame, straightened a placard. Outside, the traffic hummed in the distance. Inside, everything was still until the door chimed. Maya turned. A tall man stepped through the rain-soaked glass doors. He moved with the kind of quiet authority that comes from knowing exactly who you are, or at least pretending to. His coat was dark charcoal, his shoes gleamed, and droplets of water still clung to his hair. "I'm sorry, we're closing soon," Maya said, instinctively smoothing her hair. "That's all right," the man replied, his voice warm but firm. "I'll be quick. Name's Daniel Price. I was told this gallery carries something different." He said the word different the way some people say dangerous. Maya offered a polite smile. "We specialize in modern expressionists. What are you looking for, Mr. Price?" He took a slow turn around the room, eyes scanning the canvases. Something that doesn't just hang on a wall. Something that lives. She followed his gaze until it landed on a massive piece dominating the far wall. A storm of reds and blacks swirling together, neither colliding nor blending. "That one," he said. Maya's lips curved. "Shadow Waltz. It's one of our most evocative pieces. The artist painted it after a night in Shibuya. He said it reminded him how beauty and chaos are never truly separate." Daniel stepped closer to the canvas. "It feels alive." His words caught her off guard. Most men she met here only cared about the price tag, but his tone carried something else, depth. He turned to her. "How much?" 40,000, Maya said, expecting the usual haggling. "I'll take it." She blinked. Just like that. He smiled faintly. "I don't negotiate with things that move me." Something about the way he said it made her heart skip. She reached for a business card, and as she handed it to him, their fingers brushed just for a second. A spark ran through her like a whisper she didn't dare speak aloud. Daniel scribbled down his information. His handwriting was clean, deliberate. When he looked up again, his dark eyes met hers. "Maybe you could advise me on lighting and placement?" "Of course," she said, trying to sound professional, even as her pulse fluttered. "Just call the gallery number." "I'll do that," he replied, sliding the card into his wallet. "Thank you, Miss Collins." When the door closed behind him, Maya caught her reflection in the glass. Flushed cheeks, bright eyes, hope. It had been years since she'd seen that look on her own face. She whispered to herself, "Just another client," but she didn't believe it. The rain hadn't stopped when Daniel drove home. His sleek black Lexus climbed the winding road toward the Price estate, a mansion perched on a hill that looked down on the city like a judgment. Inside, the air smelled of cedar polish and old books. His mother, Helen Price, greeted him at the door, poised, elegant, her lips already forming a frown. "You're late, Daniel." "Traffic," he murmured. In the dining room, his father sat at the head of the table, Pastor William Price, the patriarch, the preacher, the law in human form. The heavy drapes shut out the world. Only candlelight flickered across his stern features as he read from the Bible. "Let us pray," the man intoned. Daniel bowed his head, repeating the familiar words, but his mind drifted to warm brown eyes and a voice that spoke about art like it mattered. When the prayer ended, his father looked up. "How's work?" "Good," Daniel replied. "You're 30. It's time to think about a wife." His mother's eyes flickered with approval. "A good Christian woman, Daniel. Not these modern types." He forced a smile. "I'll keep that in mind." But as he chewed his roast beef, he thought of Maya Collins. The way she spoke about beauty, the way she saw life in brushstrokes and rain. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. Later, alone in his room, Daniel loosened his tie and stared out the window. The rain kept falling, streaking the glass like tears. Somewhere out there, in the heartbeat of the city, was a woman who saw the world in color. He didn't know yet that she was hiding a truth that could shatter his own. But for now, he let the thought of her linger, warm, intoxicating, dangerous. And below, on the easel beside his desk, the painting Shadow Waltz waited, still wrapped in its shipping cloth, a storm frozen in canvas, just like the storm quietly forming inside him. The next morning, sunlight broke through Manhattan's gray skyline, scattering gold over the polished windows of Phoenix Art Gallery. Maya arrived early, her heart still heavy with the memory of last night's encounter. She told herself it was nothing, a client, a sale, a moment that didn't mean more than it should. But when she saw the empty space where Shadow Waltz had hung, it felt like something had been taken from her. By noon, the gallery phone rang. "Miss Collins." The voice on the other end was deep, measured, unmistakable. "This is Daniel Price. I need your opinion on lighting, perhaps over lunch?" Maya hesitated, her hand tightening around the receiver. Her professional side screamed no, but her heart, reckless and curious, whispered just once. "Sure," she said softly. "There's a place on West 23rd. Noon?" The restaurant Daniel chose wasn't one of the sleek corporate spots he usually frequented. It was a small French cafe with creaky wooden floors, lace curtains, and a violinist playing faintly near the door. When she arrived, Daniel was already seated by the window, a leather notebook beside his espresso. For the first time, he wasn't in a suit, just a black sweater and dark jeans. The simplicity made him seem more human. "You look," he began, pausing, searching for a word, "different in the daylight." Maya laughed lightly. "Is that good or bad?" "Dangerous," he said with a half smile. Their conversation began with small talk, colors, gallery schedules, the technicalities of lighting. But it didn't stay there. Daniel asked about her favorite artists, about the first painting that ever moved her. "Caravaggio," she said, "because he painted light as if it was alive." He leaned forward. "That's how you talk about everything, like it's alive." "And you?" she asked. "You work with numbers. That's not exactly poetic." Daniel stirred his coffee. "It's not what I wanted. My father, he decided what was acceptable. Art wasn't." Maya studied him. This confident man who, beneath the surface, seemed shaped by someone else's expectations. "And what would you have painted?" she asked softly. He looked up, meeting her eyes. "People who hide their storms." The words caught her breath. For a moment, she felt naked, as if he could see through every wall she'd built. After lunch, they walked along the Hudson, the winter wind curling through their coats. Daniel stopped by a street mural, a swirl of faces fading into color. "You ever think about how we become our own masks?" he asked. Maya smiled faintly. "I think about it every day." He didn't know how true that was. He couldn't. By the time they reached her street, the sky had turned amber. He stopped near her building, hesitant, as though the words he wanted to say might change everything. "I'd like to see you again," he said finally. "Not about the painting. About you." Maya looked up at him, the warmth in his eyes, the sincerity in his tone. A part of her wanted to run, another part wanted to believe. "I like that too," she whispered. That night, she called Sienna Ward, her closest friend and the only person who knew the truth about her past. "So he's charming, rich, and he actually listens?" Sienna teased. "Maya, are you falling for this guy?" Maya rolled onto her couch, staring at the city lights beyond her window. "I don't know. Maybe. He feels different." Sienna's tone softened. "Just be careful, okay? You've worked too hard to rebuild your life. He deserves to know who you really are, but make sure you're ready before you tell him." "I will," Maya murmured, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. After they hung up, she sat in silence, tracing her fingers along the rim of her wine glass. She thought about the years of transition, the surgeries, the pain, the fear, the rebirth. She'd finally learned to see her reflection without flinching. And now, for the first time, someone saw her too. Not as a label, not as a past mistake, but as a woman. She smiled faintly, remembering Daniel's words. People who hide their storms. If only he knew how much of her was still lightning and thunder beneath the calm. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow, dusting the city in white. In another part of Manhattan, Daniel Price stood by his apartment window, staring at the same sky. He poured himself a drink, but his thoughts weren't on the glass. They were on her, the woman with quiet fire in her eyes. And though neither of them knew it yet, love had already begun its dangerous work, revealing the truth one heartbeat at a time. By late November, Manhattan had traded its autumn gold for a coat of white. Snow drifted down over rooftops and streetlights, softening the city's usual noise into something almost sacred. Inside Phoenix Art Gallery, the world felt just as quiet. Maya stood before an empty pedestal, lost in thought, until a familiar voice pulled her back to reality. Still here after hours? She turned. Daniel stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. Steam curled from the lids. He smiled that calm, practiced smile, the kind that could make chaos look like order. "You're persistent," she teased. "Just dedicated." He handed her a cup. "To art, and maybe to its curator." Maya tried to laugh, but warmth crept up her neck. Daniel had a way of speaking that slipped past her defenses. They talked for an hour, the gallery lights dimming around them. When he finally left, she stayed a little longer, her hand still warm from where he'd brushed it. Their relationship deepened quickly after that. Dinners at Camelot restaurants. Walks through Central Park under flurries of snow. A night at the opera, Madame Butterfly, where Maya cried silently during the aria and Daniel took her hand, not saying a word. He was careful with her. Patient. Too patient, maybe. She felt it in his restraint. The way he looked at her when his hand lingered on her back. The way his breath hitched when she pulled away first. Sienna noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing," her friend said one Saturday morning as they shared brunch in Maya's apartment. "It's disgusting." "Shut up," Maya laughed. But Sienna wasn't smiling. "You still haven't told him, have you?" Maya froze mid-sip. "I'm trying. I just don't want to lose him," Sienna finished gently. "I get it. But the longer you wait, the harder it'll hit." Maya looked down at her hands. "You don't understand. With him, it feels like I finally get to be normal, like I'm not someone's secret." Sienna reached across the table, covering her hand. "You are normal. You're just afraid of his reaction. But if he's really who you think he is, he'll love you all the same." Maya nodded, but her chest tightened with doubt. Meanwhile, in the Price Mansion uptown, a very different kind of conversation unfolded. Helen Price set a steaming cup of tea before her son. "You've been distracted, Daniel. Work's been busy." "Work doesn't make a man smile at his phone," she said coolly. "Who is she?" Daniel hesitated. "Her name's Maya. She's remarkable." Pastor William looked up from his Bible. "Remarkable how?" "She makes me see things differently." The pastor's expression hardened. "Careful with that. The world loves to disguise sin in the language of art and emotion." Helen's voice was soft but sharp. "We raised you better than to fall for someone outside our faith, Daniel." He pushed his chair back abruptly. "She's not." He stopped himself. "She's kind. That's all that should matter." His father's eyes darkened. "Kindness without purity is temptation." The words lingered long after Daniel left the table. In the silence of his car, he clenched the steering wheel, caught between the man he was told to be and the one he was becoming. The next evening, the city glowed beneath a fresh layer of snow. Daniel texted, "Meet me at Central Park. I've got something to show you." When Maya arrived, the park looked like a snow globe, white, glittering, unreal. Daniel waited near the frozen fountain, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "I thought you hated the cold," she said. "I do," he admitted, handing her a cup. "But I love the quiet." They walked side by side down the empty path. The snow muffled their footsteps, the air crisp enough to make their breaths visible. "You know," Daniel said, "I used to think love was just illusion, something people told themselves to fill the void. And now," he looked at her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "Now I think I was wrong." Maya's chest tightened. The world around her blurred. The snow, the lights, even the sound of her own breath. "Daniel," she began, her voice trembling. "There's something you should know." He stopped her, touching her cheek. "Whatever it is, it doesn't matter." But it did matter. It always would. She wanted to tell him right there, under the street lamp's halo. But his eyes were full of something she hadn't felt in years. Acceptance. To shatter that, she thought, would be unbearable. So she said nothing. They kissed, slow and fragile, as snowflakes melted against their skin. And while the city slept beneath a white hush, Maya silently promised herself that next time she would tell him everything. But the snow kept falling, soft, cold, endless, as if the universe already knew the truth would come too late. The wind carried the first bite of December through Manhattan, sharp and electric, like a warning no one could quite hear. Snow pressed against the window panes of Maya Collins's apartment as she stood in front of the mirror, hands trembling slightly around a brush. Her reflection stared back. Perfect hair, soft makeup, the deep blue dress that always made her feel powerful. But tonight, it didn't feel like armor. It felt like a confession waiting to happen. On the table behind her, candles flickered around an unopened bottle of red wine. 2 glasses. Dinner for 2. Everything was in place, except for her courage. Her phone buzzed. "Daniel, on my way. Got something for you." Maya drew a shaky breath. This is it, she told herself. Tonight, she would tell him. The truth that terrified her, the truth that defined her. If he loved her, he'd stay. And if he didn't, at least she'd finally stop hiding. The doorbell rang. When she opened it, Daniel stood there with a bouquet of white roses, fresh, flawless, pure. The petals gleamed like snow. "You look beautiful," he murmured, kissing her cheek. His breath smelled faintly of winter and bourbon. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. Dinner began awkwardly. He talked about a new client, a possible promotion, small things to fill the air. Maya nodded, smiled, pushed her food around the plate. Her appetite had evaporated hours ago. Every time she opened her mouth to speak, the words stuck in her throat. Daniel's eyes narrowed with concern. "You're quiet tonight. Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." He reached across the table, brushing his thumb along her knuckles. "You can tell me anything, you know that?" That sentence nearly broke her. She looked into his eyes, those deep, searching eyes, and saw a man who wanted to believe he could love without judgment. But she also saw his father's shadow there, the sermons, the words like sin and abomination that had built the walls around his heart. "Let's dance," he said suddenly, rising to his feet. He tapped his phone, and soft jazz filled the room. Chet Baker, smooth and melancholy. Maya let him pull her close. His arms circled her waist, hers rested against his chest. They swayed slowly in the candlelight, their bodies in rhythm, but their souls at war. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's something I need to tell you." He smiled faintly, misreading the moment. "Later," he said, pressing his forehead against hers. "Let's just be us for once. No secrets, no world outside." But the world was already there, pressed against the glass, waiting. When the song faded, he kissed her again, deeper this time. His hands traced her shoulders, down her back, until she stiffened and stepped away. "Wait." Her voice cracked. "Please, hear me out." Daniel stopped, confusion flickering across his face. "What is it?" She took a breath, so deep it hurt. "Before I met you, I wasn't the woman I am now. He reached for her again, but she stepped back, shaking. "Daniel, please. I'm trying to tell you the truth." But before she could finish, his hand brushed her hip, and in that instant, everything unraveled. His body froze. His eyes widened as the realization hit him like a blade. The silence that followed was unbearable. What are you saying?" His voice was low, cracking. "I'm still me," she whispered. "The same person you met, the same person you love. You lied to me." His tone was no longer human. It was raw, trembling, stripped of everything but rage. "You made me believe." "I never lied. I just didn't know how to tell you." He staggered back, as if her words themselves had weight. "You deceived me. You made me love someone wrong." "There's nothing wrong with me," she cried, tears breaking through the last of her restraint. "I wanted to tell you. I wanted you to see me first, not what I used to be." Daniel's breathing turned shallow. His face twisted, not with hate, but with panic. Panic born from years of being told who to be, what to believe. "You don't understand," he whispered, stepping toward his coat. "You've desecrated everything I am." "Daniel, please." His hand slipped inside the coat pocket. A glint of black metal caught the candlelight. "Don't," she said softly. "You don't want to do this." But the world had gone quiet again, so quiet that even the candles seemed to stop flickering. He raised the gun, his hand trembling. "I just wanted to be honest," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The gunshot tore through the silence. Maya's body jerked, then crumpled, her blue dress blooming with red. The bouquet of white roses toppled from the table, petals scattering across the floor like fallen snow. For a moment, Daniel stood frozen, his breath fogging the air, the echo of the shot still ringing in his ears. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. The candles cast long, trembling shadows on the walls as he whispered the only words he could still form, words that meant nothing and everything at once. "God forgive me." The morning after the murder, Manhattan woke to a thin blanket of snow that covered everything but the guilt. It glittered faintly in the pale sun. Rooftops, cars, even the cracked sidewalk outside Maya Collins's apartment. The city looked calm, but inside apartment 5B, silence had turned into something heavy and unnatural. At 10:47 a.m., Sienna Ward stood at the door, a grocery bag clutched in one hand. Maya hadn't answered her calls or texts since last night. That wasn't like her. They spoke every day, always. Sienna tried the doorbell once, then again. Nothing. "Maya, it's me," she called. Still silence. Her heart began to race. She fumbled through her purse for the spare key, the one Maya had given her years ago just in case. The lock clicked. The door opened to darkness. The apartment smelled faintly of wax and roses, that sickly sweet perfume of something once beautiful turned wrong. Candles had burned themselves out, leaving tiny rivers of wax frozen in place. On the dining table sat 2 untouched wine glasses, a half-finished dinner, and a bouquet of white roses already beginning to wilt. Sienna took a step forward. "Maya," she saw it then, the edge of a blue dress on the floor near the bedroom door. Her body went cold. She dropped the bag, oranges rolling across the floor as she stumbled forward. "Maya!" The world tilted. Her friend lay motionless, eyes half open, the candlelight caught in the gloss of drying tears. The once vivid blue dress was now soaked dark with blood. A gun rested beside her, gleaming under the weak morning light. Sienna's scream echoed through the hall. Detectives arrived 20 minutes later. The lead investigator, Detective Nora West, was a woman who'd seen enough death to stop being shocked, but not enough to stop caring. She stood quietly over the body as Detective Marcus Shaw took photographs and forensics moved in. "Point-blank shot," Shaw murmured. "Clean entry through the chest. No sign of struggle." West nodded. Her gaze drifted to the table. 2 glasses, 1 bottle unopened, candles burned nearly to nothing. This wasn't a robbery. This was personal. Shaw lifted a small evidence bag from the counter. Found her phone. West scrolled through the screen carefully, gloved fingers tapping. The last text read, "On my way to your place. Got your favorite white roses. D." West exhaled slowly. "And there's our visitor." Neighbors were already gathering in the hall, whispering behind hands. One woman claimed she'd heard a loud pop around midnight, but assumed it was firecrackers, kids in the courtyard again. West looked at her notebook. Midnight. That fits the timeline. Shaw returned from the bedroom, holding a single framed photo. Maya and Daniel Price, smiling at a gallery opening, arms around each other, glowing under string lights. The picture felt too alive for this room. "Boyfriend?" Shaw asked. "Looks like it." West took the photo, studying the man's face. Daniel Price. Financial sector, right? The one tied to the Price Ministries upstate. Shaw frowned. "Yeah, his dad's that televangelist, Pastor William Price. Preaches purity and tradition every Sunday on Channel 7. West's jaw tightened. "Of course he is." Sienna sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, eyes red and distant. West knelt in front of her, voice soft but precise. "Miss Ward, I know this is hard, but I need you to tell me about Daniel Price." Sienna swallowed. They met at the gallery. He seemed kind, polite, a little quiet, maybe, but Maya said he made her feel safe. Did he know about her past? Sienna hesitated, tears filling her eyes. Not yet. She was going to tell him last night. She said she couldn't keep it a secret anymore. West Penn paused mid-note. She told you that? She texted me around 8. Said she'd make dinner and tell him everything. I told her to call me after. She never did. For a moment, the only sound was the click of a camera shutter from the next room. Miss Ward, West said quietly, I'm sorry, but we're going to find him. An officer approached. Detective, we checked the building security cameras. They're down. Been out for 2 weeks. Convenient, Shaw muttered. West straightened, her expression sharpening. Pull footage from the street cameras. Check every intersection within a 2-block radius. He didn't vanish into thin air. As she turned back toward the body, her gaze landed on the spilled roses near Maya's hand. The petals were scattered across the floor, white fading to crimson. West crouched, her voice barely a whisper. You just wanted to be honest, didn't you? Outside, the sirens quieted, the snow kept falling, and the city went on pretending nothing had happened. But inside apartment 5B, the air still carried the faint scent of roses and gunpowder, and the beginning of a truth that would soon unravel everything. The snow was still falling when Detective Nora West stepped into the precinct the next morning. Steam rose from her coffee as she scanned the evidence board, the photographs, the timeline, the unanswered questions. In the center, taped in red marker, was Maya Collins's photo, warm eyes, quiet smile, a life frozen mid-sentence. Across from her, Detective Marcus Shaw leaned back in his chair, flipping through a preliminary forensic report. Ballistics confirmed the bullet came from a 9mm Glock. No serial number. It's a ghost gun. West didn't look up, which means it was bought off the books. Maybe through one of those underground exchanges out in Jersey. Yeah, Shaw said. And our guy? Daniel Price. Age 30, financial analyst. No priors. No history of violence. Clean on paper, West murmured. But something about him doesn't fit clean anymore. She pointed to the crime scene photo of the table. 2 glasses, 1 half full of wine. He left calmly. White prints. No panic. That's not impulse. That's intent. By noon, West and Shaw sat in a narrow conference room, interviewing Sienna Ward again. She looked exhausted, her voice raspy from crying. Maya told me she was going to tell him the truth that night, Sienna said. She was scared, but she wanted to stop hiding. She loved him, detective. She really did. Did Daniel know about her transition? West asked. Sienna shook her head. No, that's why she was so afraid. He grew up in one of those families, the ones who think people like her are a sin. West exchanged a glance with Shaw. His father's a preacher, she said flatly. That tracks. Sienna reached in her bag and pulled out a small leather journal. This was Maya's. She started keeping it after her surgery, said helped her stay grounded. The last entry was the day she died. West opened it carefully. Maya's handwriting was delicate, looping. The words on the final page made her throat tighten. Tonight, I'll tell him. If he loves me, he'll understand. But God, I'm so afraid. West closed the journal and exhaled through her nose. Afraid, and right to be. That afternoon, West and Shaw drove to Price Financial Group, a glass tower gleaming over Midtown. Daniel Price met them in the lobby, suit crisp, expression composed, like a man expecting a performance review, not a homicide investigation. Detectives, he greeted smoothly. Terrible news about Maya. How can I help? Let's start with where you were last night, West said. He didn't flinch. At her apartment until around 10. She said she was tired, so I left. Then I went to Olympus Gym, signed in, used the sauna. You can confirm it. West studied him. Calm, polite, trained. You have any firearms, Mr. Price? No, he said immediately. My father always believed weapons were instruments of sin. West's eyebrow twitched. Funny. The bullet we pulled from Maya came from a 9mm ghost gun. We're checking recent unregistered sales. Daniel smiled faintly, but there was something mechanical about it. You won't find my name on anything illegal, detective. As he turned to leave, West noticed the faintest tremor in his right hand. She didn't miss much. Back at the precinct, the lab report came in. Forensics had swabbed everything from the crime scene. Glasses, wine bottle, surfaces. Nothing new, but one detail jumped out. Shaw read it aloud. Unknown residue detected on victim's dining table. Partial chemical match to gunpowder. West frowned. Gunpowder on the table? He cleaned the gun, but maybe he missed something. Shaw nodded. We could cross-reference that with his alibi at the gym. If he handled a gun and then signed in. West's eyes lit up. The pen. They drove to Olympus 24-hour Fitness, where the receptionist, a young woman with red hair and a nervous smile, pulled up the logbook. Yeah, he was here that night, she said, pointing. Signed in at 11:05 p.m. West examined the entry. The signature was large, uneven, as if written by someone whose hand was shaking. Mind if we borrow this pen? West asked, sliding a gloved hand over the sleek black gel pen printed with the gym's logo. Sure, the receptionist said. He's always polite, though. You think he did something? West offered a faint smile. Let's just say politeness isn't proof of innocence. Back at the lab, technicians ran the pen under spectrographic analysis. It didn't take long. Gunshot residue, the tech confirmed. Microscopic particles of barium, lead, and antimony on the barrel and grip. And that's not all. Trace blood smears under the clip, almost invisible to the naked eye. West leaned over the evidence tray, her eyes cold and steady. He signed his alibi with the murder still on his hands. That night, she stood at the evidence board again. The timeline finally lined up. 11 p.m., gunshot heard by neighbor. 11:05 p.m., Daniel signs in at the gym. 11:20 p.m., calls his father. 7-minute conversation. Next morning, parents fly to the Bahamas. He planned everything, Shaw said quietly. Gun, alibi, getaway for the family. But he didn't think about a pen. West allowed herself a thin smile. They never do. They scrub the blood, they destroy the gun, but the small things always give them away. She stepped closer to Maya's photo. The woman smiling softly from the wall, forever 30, forever afraid and brave all at once. Rest now, West whispered. We've got him. Outside, snow drifted past the precinct windows. White, endless, silent, just like the lies Daniel Price thought could cover his crime. Daniel Price had always believed control was strength. Control of emotions, control of image, control of every breath in and out. But when Detective Nora West walked into the interrogation room, he looked like a man who had been holding his breath for too long and was about to drown in the silence. The room was sterile, walls bare except for a clock ticking like a heartbeat gone wrong. Daniel sat rigid in his chair, hand folded, jaw tight. He wore the same calm expression he'd perfected his whole life, one taught in pews and polished in boardrooms. But his eyes were restless. West didn't start with accusations. She started with the truth he had tried so desperately to avoid. You loved her, she said simply, placing a slim folder on the table. Didn't you? Daniel swallowed. She deceived me. West leaned back. That's not what I asked. He looked away. Silence. Heavy, choking silence. West slid a photo toward him. Maya, smiling at the gallery opening, her hair caught in the soft glow of champagne lights. You knew what love felt like for the first time. Didn't you, Daniel? His jaw clenched. What I felt was manipulated. She was terrified. West cut in, her voice low and firm. She wanted you to know her. She planned to tell you that night, and she prayed you'd still see the woman she was. His eyes flickered. That hit something. You made her a promise, West continued, eyes sharp, that you could be yourself with her. That for once, someone saw you, not just the pastor's son. There was a tiny crack. His fingers twitched. West pulled another sheet from the folder, the lab results from the pen. Your signature at the gym had gunshot residue and blood. Small things, Daniel. Small details you overlooked when you were panicking. His face drained. You smoothed the tablecloth, wiped the gun, wiped the door handle, she said. But a pen you barely touched for 5 seconds destroyed your alibi. She watched him breathe, shallow, uneven. The mask was slipping. You killed her, West whispered, because loving her scared you more than losing her. His eyes snapped up, wide and wounded. No, she tricked me into sin, into wanting something I shouldn't. West leaned forward, voice cutting like glass. She didn't trick you. You loved her. You loved a woman, and instead of facing your truth, you killed hers. Daniel's hand trembled. He clasped them together again quickly, like a child caught doing something forbidden. Let's talk about that phone call to your father at 11:20 p.m., West added. 7 minutes. Long enough to confess. To ask for guidance. What did the holy man tell his son to do? Daniel shut his eyes. Moisture gathered at the corners. Not grief, but the pressure of his soul collapsing. He told me, Daniel whispered, voice breaking, to stay silent. To pray. To wait for him. And the next morning, Wes said, your parents fled the country, leaving you holding the gun God didn't put in your hand. A shaky breath. Another. Then, I didn't mean to, he muttered. I didn't plan to. You bought the gun 3 weeks ago, Wes countered. You carried it to her apartment. Loaded. He froze. You thought you could love her, Wes said quietly. You thought she could wash shame off your skin. But it wasn't shame, Daniel. It was fear and hate. The kind that gets passed down like heirlooms. He lifted his hands to his face, fingers in his hair, gripping, pulling at the perfect composure he'd spent a lifetime wearing. I prayed every night, he whispered hoarsely. I begged God to take it away. The desire, the feeling. I thought if I could drown it, kill it in me, I'd be clean. His voice cracked, but she made me feel like I could be free. A tear slid down his cheek. And freedom scared you more than sin, West murmured. Daniel looked small then, smaller than any man she'd ever interrogated. A boy who had been told his heart was wrong until it finally killed something beautiful. She looked at me, he whispered, eyes distant. Even when his voice broke. She looked at me like she understood, like she forgave me. West's jaw tightened. She shouldn't have had to forgive you. Silence. Then Daniel's shoulders collapsed. His composure, shattered like glass, dropped from heaven. I did it, he breathed. I killed her. West nodded slowly, not triumphant, but solemn. Justice wasn't joy. It was duty. She wasn't a lie, West said. You were. And he didn't deny it. Because for the first time in his life, Daniel Price faced the truth. Not the one carved in stone by a preacher, but the one bleeding from his own hands. Outside the interrogation room, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless, unforgiving. The city kept moving. But inside, a life ended last night finally began to find justice. West stood, gathering the evidence. We'll take your formal statement. And Daniel. He looked up hollow-eyed. Pray all you want, she said. But this time, you're going to answer to the law, not your father's God. As she left, Daniel collapsed forward, sobs choking him. Not for Maya, not yet, but for the truth he'd smothered until it killed her. A guard cuffed him, gently, because even monsters cry when they finally see themselves. And somewhere in a quiet part of the precinct, Maya's journal lay in an evidence box. One final entry glowing like a candle in the dark. If he loves me, he'll understand. I hope love is stronger than fear. But in that room, the echo of a gunshot still lived, and fear had won. The trial of Daniel Price began 6 months later, but the city hadn't forgotten. Every headline, every talk show, every podcast called it what it was, the Price hate crime case. Outside the Manhattan Supreme Court, protesters filled the street. Rainbow flags, candles, and signs that read justice for Maya and love is not a sin. Across from them stood another group, smaller but louder, clutching Bibles and chanting verses about divine order. Inside, the air was thick, reporters scribbling notes, cameras flashing, families divided by single aisle. Daniel entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, thinner now, his confidence reduced to silence. His lawyer, Miles Hendricks, walked beside him like a man escorting a ghost. On the prosecution side, Assistant District Attorney Eleanor Duval stood poised, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. Detective Nora West sat in the first row behind her, arms folded, face unreadable. She'd testified already, but she needed to see this through, needed to see Maya's name cleared of the lies that had shadowed her death. When the judge gavelled in, ADA Duval rose. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, her voice steady. This case isn't only about murder. It's about what happens when hate, is disguised as faith, and fear is mistaken for righteousness. She moved toward the jury box, eyes fierce. Maya Collins lived her life with grace and courage. She was a woman who loved, who worked, who dreamed, and for that she was killed. Not because she deceived anyone, but because someone couldn't face the truth of who she was. Every word landed heavy. Daniel's eyes dropped to the table. When it was Hendrix's turn, he stood and painted a different story. One of shock, of deception, of a good man undone by unbearable revelation. My client, he said, was not motivated by hatred, but by confusion, by heartbreak. He believed the woman he loved had concealed something fundamental. He turned to the jury, lowering his voice. Can any of us say how we'd react if our entire world, our faith, our beliefs, our understanding of love, were shattered in a single moment? He sat down, and the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Over the next week, the prosecution dismantled Daniel's defense piece by piece. Forensics presented the pen, the simple, unassuming gel pen that carried both gunshot residue and microscopic blood, sealing the timeline. Surveillance footage showed a dark figure leaving Maya's building just before 11 p.m., matching Daniel's build, coat, and gait. Then came Detective West's testimony. She spoke clearly, no theatrics, just truth. The defendant planned this, she said, her tone flat, factual. He purchased a ghost gun weeks before the murder, rehearsed his alibi, and contacted his father minutes after the killing. The only thing he didn't plan was the evidence he left behind, because guilt doesn't wash off that easily. When defense cross-examined, West didn't flinch. Detective, are you suggesting this was premeditated? I'm not suggesting anything, she replied. I'm stating a fact. The defense called Pastor William Price, Daniel's father, to the stand. The man's voice was calm, but his hands betrayed a faint tremor. My son was raised in faith, he said. He was taught right from wrong. He made a terrible mistake, but he is not evil. Do you believe your son's actions were justified? ADA Duval asked. The pastor's gaze hardened. I believe sin breeds confusion. The devil deceives good men. Duval leaned in. So your son's sin was love? The pastor hesitated, his certainty faltering under the courtroom's glare. His sin was being deceived. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Finally, Sienna Ward took the stand. She clutched a small photograph, Maya laughing, wind in her hair, and when she spoke, her voice shook, but her words were clear. Maya trusted him, she said. She thought love could survive the truth. She was wrong, but not about herself, about him. She wasn't hiding to deceive. She was hiding because she was afraid. The defense attorney approached gently. Why didn't she tell him earlier, Ms. Ward? Sienna looked straight at him. Because she saw how he spoke about people like her. Because she heard the sermons his father preached. She wanted him to see her heart before he saw her past. When she stepped down, half the courtroom was in tears. Closing arguments came like thunder and prayer colliding. ADA Duval stood tall before the jury. We cannot let fear become a weapon. We cannot excuse murder with scripture. Maya Collins was a woman. She was loved, and she was executed for daring to live truthfully. She paused, voice lowering to a whisper. Justice for her isn't vengeance. It's recognition. Recognition that her life mattered. Then she rested her hand on the evidence table, on the blue dress, folded neatly in a sealed bag, and the pen beside it. Symbols of truth and blood. The jury deliberated 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom went silent. Do you find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree? The judge asked. A juror stood. Yes, Your Honor. And do you find the crime was motivated by bias or hate? Yes, Your Honor. A low gasp spread across the room. Daniel Price closed his eyes. He didn't pray this time. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, the judge declared. May the court never again see love turn to hate in its walls. Weeks later, Detective West met Sienna at the Phoenix Art Gallery. It had reopened, quiet but alive again. On the center wall hung Shadow Waltz, the same painting that had brought Maya and Daniel together. They stood before it in silence. The reds and blacks intertwined like fire and smoke, like life and death refusing to separate. Sienna's voice was soft. She used to say art was about what's inside, not what you see. Wes nodded. Like people. They lingered there until the lights dimmed, and the reflections of the city glittered through the glass. Sienna whispered, "Do you think she forgave him?" Wes stared at the painting for a long moment. Maybe she saw the boy he used to be, the one before the sermons, before the hate. Maybe forgiveness was the last thing she ever felt. Outside, the snow had melted, leaving puddles that caught the glow of streetlights, like fragments of the city trying to hold its own reflection. As they left, Wes looked back one last time at the painting, its crimson streaks burning against the canvas like memory itself. "Rest now, Maya," she said under her breath. "Your truth outlived his lie." And with that, she stepped out into the night. Another case closed, another life remembered, another story the city would never forget.